Welcome to the Chase Merrell podcast. I am your host, Chase Merrell, and we are all about helping people get freed up from what's holding them back so they can build up who they were made to be. In today's conversation, I have my friend Cory Freeborn with me. Cory is a great friend, one of those guys that, like, no matter what is going on in life, he's there for you. He inspires me. Him and his wife, Andie, and their 3 kids have become such incredible parts of our lives over this last 3.5, 4 years. And he is not only a business owner, but he's also a lieutenant in a fire department in the Pacific Northwest. And he's one of those guys that it just doesn't matter really what's going on in life, but he figures out a way to be there for you. I'm so thankful for him. So thankful for the way that he loves and cares about people. I'm so thankful that the Lord crossed our paths and we have the friendship that we have now. And he's been through a lot, and he's continued to be a resilient and faithful, loyal father, husband, and friend, and I cannot wait to share this conversation with you today. If you want to help us continue to make an impact with this podcast week in and week out, consider joining our new Patreon community. For as little as a cup of coffee a month, you can be a part of helping us get the message and mission of the podcast out to more people more effectively. This is a way that we can come together as a community, and you'll get access to behind the scenes stuff, additional resources and content, and so much more for just as little as $5 a month. You can head over to chasemerrell.com and click Patreon to jump in and get started. Now let's jump into today's conversation. Well, here we go. I got my friend Cory Freeborn with me today on the Chase Merrell podcast. Welcome, Cory.
Thank you, Chase. I'm excited to be here.
Dude, so cool to have you here in person, and it's been a journey of different scheduling things and all that. We're both busy dudes.
You're a busy guy.
No, dude, you're actually a busy dude. Like I'm like faux ministry busy. You're actually busy, out there saving lives and stuff. We'll talk more about that, but dude, it is so good to have you joining me today and being a part of this project, the 52 project. You're one of the 52 people that has made an impact on my life, and I wanted to be sure to have an episode over this project where we could have a conversation to get to share a part of why you've made that impact, and beyond just the impact you've had on my life, share more of like who you are with the world, people that are listening and watching. And so super pumped that you're with me today, man. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah.
And I would say, I think you are actually busier than I am.
Well, we both probably have we talked about this a couple of weeks ago or a week or so ago, like an aversion to, you said you get more like maybe not frustrated is the right word, but like texting is you get more anxiety around texting. I get more anxiety around phone calls, and I think I avoid both of them at times, but just that so funny. We got a lot of different similarities and commonalities between us in different ways. But man, I just for a moment, for people listening or watching that don't know you and who you are in like a nutshell, like this is kind of one of those difficult, how do you do this in a nutshell, but just like in kind of like one broad stroke, would you just introduce yourself a little bit with who you are, where you are in the season of your life, who you're connected to, like as in like a family, and or just what you're doing when it comes to job, career, that kind of thing, so people can kind of just like, okay, here's a snapshot of who Cory Freeborn is.
Yeah. I'll start off with first my wife. Tomorrow we celebrate 12 years.
Let's go, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. And we've been together for either 20 or 21 years, depending on who that you ask. Yeah. But we met around 15, 16 years old, and it's been awesome. Yeah. So we get to celebrate that, I think, without kids tomorrow.
Yeah, let's go.
But we have 3 kids. We have Amelia is our youngest, our girl. She's 5, Dean's 7. I always have to think about this, and Jack is 10.
Yeah.
So they are our life. We have so much fun, and honestly, they're the ones that like make me want to be the best who I am every day.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I wear a lot of other hats. My wife and I opened a business 5 years ago. Thanks for the sponsorship.
You can see it here, all the camera angles.
So we do physical and occupational therapy for injured workers. So we have a place here in Lacey, Centralia. And that's been a journey of its own that I'm sure we'll talk more about. Yeah.
For those that they're not watching visually, it's called Freeborn Wellness. And is there like a tag to the occupational stuff there, or is it just Freeborn Wellness when it comes
Freeborn Wellness, industrial therapy?
There you go. Cool.
And that was definitely something that we were led to do, that we can talk more about. But well, I'm also a lieutenant at a fire department in a busy area.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of balancing that I'm still working on right now in my life. Just a lot of things every day, not sure what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I also get a lot of joy out of that and a lot of growth. So,
yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah.
I was born and raised kind of right by where you're from.
Yeah. Right.
South of Sacramento in the valley.
That's right. Yeah.
And I miss the sun
Yeah.
down there, but Washington also gives us a lot of great things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I was raised by my mom and dad. And then later on, I was gifted to have a stepdad and start kind of a different life up here to meet more people. And I'm thankful for that as well.
Yeah. So. Yeah. You when I think about holistically, like who you are, it's difficult to like fathom at times the amount of things that you have your hands in or have had your hands in simultaneously that are all, for lack of better terms, like they're all turning to gold. Like they're all making steps towards improving people's lives and successful and growing. And I mean, that includes your marriage, that includes your family and being, part of that priority piece there, but when I'm like, wait, so you're a full-time, lieutenant of a fire department. And again, you said a busy area, like it's a busy area. It's a busy area. You guys aren't getting to sleep as much maybe as other places. And man, just shout out to the first responders in general, man. Like just like you guys are a different level of human when it comes to your ability to run towards the danger and the fire and all of those things that most people are running away from. So yeah, we will talk a little bit more about that. But so you're doing that, man. You've started and are leading a business with your wife, launching a second location of that business. So like leading teams of people. There's just you guys got a cool house and property. There's lots of projects and things out there consistently that you're involved in. And then there's these things where part of the impact you've had on me as we've been in relationship over 4 or 5 years now is the way that you in all of that can just have this ability to go, hey, do you need help? Is there something that like or not even, sometimes you don't even ask the question. You just say, I can help, or I can, hey, you know what? You're looking at your phone for a second and you're thinking like, I have a window, tomorrow or this weekend or whatever. I can come over there and help you, take a look at that or whatever. And it's like, and so I'm sitting back going like, how do you not only like practically have the wherewithal and the capacity to do things like that, but also like it's what I recognize. It's the heart capacity to see beyond your immediate preferences and or needs to be able to go, I want to help meet and be there for somebody else that I care about. And it's just, there's been so many times, dude, that just that concept has so challenged me in who I am as a man, where, again, and I'm sure that there's times and seasons where that has stretched you beyond your limits, where you'd had maybe to take a step back and go, okay, I can't help as much or whatever that is. But like, there's just been times where I'm thinking to myself, this guy's willing to come off of a 48-hour shift, which is where you're here right now sitting with me after 48 hours of working, in the fire world, to be here to have this conversation, because of relationship. And I go like, God, help me be more like that. Help me have the ability to see people and the opportunity to serve and love and care for them in a way that at times means my needs and preferences are sacrificed or being sacrificed, but that's okay. Because there's just something deep. It's not just people pleasing. It's not just, overextended, generous, like desire to help everybody you see. It's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. And I think it comes from the Lord, whether or not it's, you've always recognized that as something the Lord has given you, but I do think he's placed that part in you long before you even really journeyed into that, like, relationship with him. I think he's part of how he's wired you, but you've continued to let him cultivate that in a way that's been so impactful, man. So impactful. So one piece there, just out of the gate, wanted to communicate to you, and for people listening, like you are one of the most quality human beings, you and Andie, your family, that I have ever met in my entire life. Like, and you've had 4 or 5 years to prove it to me now. Like, it wasn't just a one-time experience. Okay, like they're good people, and it's consistency over time that I've been like, these are some of the most quality human beings I have ever met in my life, holistically, and there's so many other things I can and will say on this conversation, but just wanted to start with that because for people to understand like why you're, it's a value for me and a privilege to have you here with me today. So, part of the journey of us starting this relationship, because we're in life group together, which is going on, gosh, 5 years. Probably just about 5 years. And, Holly and I, when we moved to Olympia in 2017, we kind of got invited into a life group, at the time with some great dear friends, which actually I'll have another one of those guys on the podcast at some point too. But there came a time where we crossed paths at church, and, I can't remember how initially, because it was like the second or third time that we really had that moment of connection from that day, that morning I'll never forget. But I think we probably met, outside of the church before or after service or something like that, just kind of crossing paths, and so enough for you to be able to like, okay, I know who he is, or I know who you are from like a name, standpoint, but not any relationship really had started yet. Yeah,
I think I remember the first time that we met, you just got done doing a service, and I was out in the parking lot. And you just walked up and you introduced yourself to me.
That's right. Okay, I'm remembering.
And I was still pretty like shy, I guess. Church is something that hasn't been part of my whole life. And so it was very new at that point. And I just remember like, oh man, I clicked with this guy, and I think I actually was like, hey, we're gonna have a July 4th party. Come over. Like, we'll have a beer and just talk. And
that was part of what when I first met. Speaking of that, I was like, how can this dude, I just met him, like, how could he invite, how could he just open his invite up to a family? Because it was like 4th of July, but it was also like Jack's birthday kind of combo kind of thing, and so I was like, who does that? Like, who invites someone over to a family kind of? I totally no, now I get it. But yeah, you're right. I think I remember that happening. That was that first moment. And
then I think just after that, I think you guys were busy during that time. Well, you're always busy, but then I think just through time, we just were able to talk more and connect more. We had a few more interactions. I think probably connected to church, and then there was the morning that I'll never forget. And I know it's like, just the challenge of that season, is something that marked me, and probably marked the beginnings of really what became our friendship. Was a Sunday morning. I don't know if it was in between a service or before or whatever, where you and I, you found me in the hallway, or you caught my eye in the hallway, and we locked eyes, and you like, came over to me, and I could tell like your heart was heavy. Something was like significantly not good. And like, that's when you grabbed me. You're like, can I talk to you? Can I share just some really difficult news of, I'm just thinking about the weight of that moment. Just your dad. Yeah. And I think, as we kind of talked about before this, just, I don't think I would have been able to even talk about that moment before, maybe now. And, that day still definitely hands down marks one of the most difficult days of my life. And, I just remember I got off of work, and it was just one of those days at work, right? Like we all have good days at work, and we have hard days at work, and that was just a hard day. There was I had some calls at work that just really closely related to the situation that I went through with the loss of my dad, and I was headed home, and like any Sunday that I get off of work, Andie's, she's calling me up like, hey, are you coming to church in the morning? And, I certainly tried to. And I was like, that day I'm like, no, I just can't, like, just not there. Yeah. And I didn't explain that to her. I don't really talk about work that much at home, So, but I did. Like, something was like, you got to just pull off, get in there. And that's when I found you. It was afterwards, because I remember that Pastor John was preaching that day, and he had recently lost his dad. And so just another moment of just that connection on a difficult day that I was having. And like it felt like that you have known me at that point my whole life. Yep. And we just had that moment together. I know that Pastor John came in as well. Yeah. And it definitely saw me in one of the most difficult times in my life. Yeah. And but I needed that. Yeah. It's been a long process. This month marks 4 years. And so, but, I think it's like anything with life, that time can be helpful. Yeah. And also through your heart and your mind to be able to get through hard things. Yeah. And I just kind of told myself at some point, like, I need to stop mourning the loss of my dad. I need to focus on remembering the life that he had. Yeah. Yeah. And that's been able to get me through a lot of it now. Yeah. Yeah.
So. The way, so yeah, when you said like, it felt like, I knew you, or we knew each other for our whole lives in that kind of moment. There was something like it, the way my heart connected in that sense to you in that moment when you came in and shared, and we're just like, I just need to talk. I just need somebody to pray with me, and it was like the Lord gave me vision of like, this is your brother. Like, you are brothers. Yeah. It was like an expedited kind of relational connection in a way that was like, I didn't even think, it was like a second nature kind of thing. Like, if this was your brother in that kind of relational, connection, how would you respond and be there in that moment? And so like, that's just like, it just got like, I feel like the Lord spiritually imparted in that moment. And that's how I felt, connected in that way to you. And I don't know if I would say that's been lost ever since, like just that sense of like, of connection. But part of what really stood out about that moment, and then the following, season that you just mentioned, the morning that turned into remembering and celebrating the life and the impact that he lived and had, was your natural, well, it may have not been natural, but you chose the intentional decision to, rather than retreat and isolate on your darkest day and your darkest moment, or find another way to cope with that. You pursued a community in a sense. You recognized like, I need somebody, I need help. And like, I'll just never forget that. I'll never forget, because you're not a weak dude. Obviously, like you've carried a lot of weight on your shoulders for a long time in your life through different capacities. You're the fact that you're, coming up. How long have you been in emergency service, having fire and stuff? More than 15 years, right? Or you're more?
Yeah. So I started when I was 17, 18 years old. Jeez. In high school. My senior year, I started. Immediately became a resident at the fire department, became a paramedic, went down that route, got hired, and now I'm at the department that I'm at now as a lieutenant. So it's definitely been this growth over, I guess that's 18 years now, which is crazy to even think about. I mean, I just remember feeling like I was a kid out there, on a fire truck.
Yeah. Well, you were a kid out there on a fire truck.
I really was. Yeah.
But that sense of like, you've seen some stuff, you've been through, obviously you've been strength and know how to be strength. So there was this moment of me recognizing this guy's not unfamiliar with what is required to be strong in very difficult and challenging moments. And in that, he is made that intentional decision to not try to take all this on by himself, but to put himself in a position that was vulnerable, to say like, I need help. Like, I need somebody, I need something. And yeah, I think part of me as a guy that's in a different kind of role with ministry and things that, again, very different in that space of careers and all that, but there's that sense of strength, of being strong. I am strong, but being strong and needing to be strong for a lot of people a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
To feel like when I am not good, I can get help or ask for help or lean on somebody else. And there was a really, really impactful moment that the Lord used you in that moment to show me, like, that is the way, like, he's designed and wants our relationships to be. And I just think there's a lot of people that when they, if they're going through something now, or they have gone through something, they will go through something, just that, like, really strong reminder that, like, you can't do it alone. And as much as you want to try and isolate or retreat and push through or whatever else, like, there's something powerful about that. Like, it's scary, and to a degree, because you're trusting somebody with, like, the most, like, sensitive, like, piece of a fresh wound to go, I don't even know. But that you did that, man. You did that in a way that I was like, wow, okay, this is how you do this. And I'm just so thankful for that example, because it marked me in a really significant way, and I think has been a part of the journey that I've walked out in the last few years through some other things, as he had a really great example in that there, as you navigated that. But man, one of the things that I've also watched you do so well in that space is that grieving and mourning transition and journey to that celebration and remembering. And I don't know if it's ever like I don't know if it's a graduation of, like, you don't grieve and mourn anymore and you just celebrate and remember. I'm sure that there's probably a bit of a cycle at times, but there's definitely been a shift, like you mentioned. Like, for people that are maybe experiencing loss or have experienced loss recently, or in the middle of that kind of season, someone close, like a father or a mother or somebody in that capacity, what would you encourage? How would you encourage them about that transition, about, like, what helped you when you navigated that? You mentioned time being a big factor, but is there anything else you would say that was helpful for you or might help other people as they're in the middle of processing maybe a similar thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I guess first, just back up to that moment. It wasn't me that came to you that day. Like, I told myself every reason to not get off that exit and to, like, not be open. And, I think for years I had kind of buried things within. But this was like that news, that heaviness, because I felt like my relationship with my dad was, like, so far from being over. Like, in fact, I feel like it was just starting to really blossom, and, so that was really helpful to know, like, hey, like, I've got people, like, I have people on my side, and being able to really lean on people and talk to people about it. But ultimately, I didn't want this to impact me being a dad. In a way of, like, dad's not healthy. I think it was important for my kids to see how hard that this is to go through, because that's just part of life. And them being raised in a home that has a family that we love each other, and we're going to go through good times and bad. Right. But I didn't want it to become their problem. And I wanted to be there for them. I wanted to be the dad that still went out to throw the football. And not just be the dad who was just constantly just mourning and going through these hard times. And the same thing with my relationship with my wife, you know, like, this wasn't her fault that my dad died. And so I knew that I needed to be the best me with all these hats that I wear, and it's been a challenge. There's still definitely moments and times. But what I have realized is, I didn't want to, with the anniversary of his death coming up, like, I didn't want to just mourn him every year on his anniversary. I didn't want to just, like, mourn that he's not there on the holidays and the call to, like, instead I've tried to shift it to, how can I remember him and embrace him and think about him? And it's crazy, because when I did that, I've been flooded with memories that I don't know if I would have ever remembered, to be honest. You know, like just mentally, I've been able to remember more, which has been really cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's his way to like tell me like, hey, like we had great times.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it just, I had to keep moving on. And that's what my dad would have wanted. He would not have wanted, he would have smacked me upside my head if I was just going to mourn him forever. Yeah. So, and then just through the life group and my faith and everything else, like, and that was a process of its own. Like, again, I found every obstacle to not do it. Like when you guys asked, I'm like, oh, another thing on the calendar, like more people to open up to, like all of these things. Right. But what a gift it has been for us in our life and the challenges that we have all been through. Yeah. I mean, when I think about our life group, it's like, it was not what I was expecting it to be honest. Like as somebody new in the church and faith and everything, I'm like, oh man, like this is probably not going to be for me. Yeah. But to realize that you guys are just like any other people that have been in my life, but then to be able to dive even deeper. Yeah. And it's been a huge gift. Yeah. So
that was when the day we had, like we just referenced from that day you came and talked to Pastor John and I walked away from that being like, we need to be around these guys. I want to be. It's not even like need to be. It was like, I want to do more life with them. And that at that point, we had some transition of some couples in our life group that were moving and different things. And so there was just a little bit more space in that. And, you know, I just remember going to Holly and being like, I think that we need to talk to the life group about inviting this couple in and their family. And at that point, Holly hadn't really met, you know, you guys that much or knew you very well, but she just knew how genuine I was sensing this. And so, but the rest of the group didn't really know you at that point from what I remember. There might have been some, you know, overlap, but I remember them at that point too, being like, I don't know. Like we've already had a couple years of that kind of, you know, it's always challenging, I think, in the church context and really in any relationships, right? Like relationships are funky, you know, when you kind of get your circle, if you will, it's hard to invite somebody in that doesn't have all of the context or experience from the previous things. And, you know, it takes more time to do that. And yet I believe as followers of Jesus, like that's part of what we're called to do. Like it's disciples making disciples. It's that ability to recognize like, this is temporary, all of this, like there's eternity that we're living towards in regards to like life and purpose. And so get over yourself kind of thing. For me, I'm still speaking to me of like your own little kind of group that you've created. There's healthiness, obviously, that you like and enjoy and is good about having relationships that you have developed over time that you can be really vulnerable and trust. That does take time. And so there's something about protecting that. But I think sometimes in the church circles, that can be almost like idolized too much, where it's like, we are going to never have any other relationships with people because of that. And also because we actually just, you know, don't want to have to put in the energy or the preference of whatever. And I just knew this was different in general. You guys God spoke to me. It was like, I mean, that's not to over spiritualize it. It was like, these guys need to be a part of your guys' lives. And so, just remember the group being more open than I thought they'd be to the idea of inviting you guys to come and, you know, and then I also was like, I don't know if they're even going to say yes. Like, I remember telling them like, these guys are busy and, you know, they're newer to faith in the church and stuff too. They may not even be open to that, but I just think we need to give it a shot. And so for the fact that it all came together and you guys did come and did overcome the like, oh, we're going to find childcare and one more thing on the schedule and not bail. And everybody in our, you know, in the group they were just like immediately like, oh yeah, these guys are the real deal. We love them. So all that wasn't a problem. It was really on your guys' end that you just didn't give up, that I really commend and go, man, part of why we have what we have now is because you guys just didn't pull the plug when you could have on, you know, a lot of inconvenience and things that you guys were on the other side of, you know, the area. You had to drive 20, 25 minutes probably to be there. Yeah, all these things. And yet, man, look at 3.5, 4 years later, you know, like you mentioned, I can't imagine life without the Freeborns, you know, and not just life without the Freeborns, life without the Freeborns and the depth of relationship and connection and vulnerability that we've created with them, you know, over the last 4 years. It's like, yeah, of course they're there, you know.
I think so much of it has to do with my wife too. Like,
Sure.
she definitely drives me, like, not physically in the car, but like, like motivation and like, nope, we're going to do it. And I can think of so many things in our life that I'm so thankful for, that I think I would have just like been like, no, not right now.
Yeah.
Let me think about it. Let me process. Where she's like, oh, I already told them yes.
Yeah.
You know?
I know. And there's so many things about Andie that are in that vein that I'm like, praise God for that piece of her, like, and the way he's wired her in that, because of, to your point, how many things maybe wouldn't be experienced, you know, had it not been for, oh yeah, I already said yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. What do you, I mean, so being in it, right? Like you mentioned, kind of newer to faith, you know, it's something that you had context of growing up, but maybe not in the way that you have over the last 4 or 5 years. I guess the question would be more twofold. One is specifically about like the idea of authentic relationships and like life group stuff. And the other one would be more about your journey with Jesus. But so part one being, what do you feel like is a part of, and our life group's not perfect, obviously. We've, you know, we've had several, you know, seasons of some ups and downs and different things. And even recently have had a few come to Jesus talks together as a group to figure out like, what's the vision forward? What are we doing? And all of the different adjustments, but we're still together and still like very much so involved in each other's lives in a really healthy way, centered on Jesus. What would you say from your vantage point coming in as to this point, still the newer, you know, couple or family to the group? What's been a factor that you would say has been part of why we have worked, or why it has worked as a, you know, 3, 4, 5 different families with different things and seasons of life and different things, like, yet somehow has maintained ongoingly connection, a relationship, and growth together? What do you see as one of the things that has been a factor to that, or like a part of that formula that's helped it work?
Life. Yeah. I think it is exactly what the definition is of a life group.
Yeah. And tell me more about that.
Yeah. Just, you know, I thought my perspective, I guess, in my mind was that, like, I'm gonna have to go into this group and open up a Bible and read names that I'm still new at and I don't understand, or like go through that. And there's part of like me that was maybe embarrassed to do that, or shy to do it, or whatever. And to realize that it's people who have similar life values and maybe in different ways. People who go through different seasons of life, through difficulty. We've lost people in our life group through cancer, and that was tough. And to be able to be there together for that, to be able to be open and not feel judged, and to be me, right? Yeah. I mean, I can't always in the other parts of my life just be completely me. Yeah. And that has definitely been one of the biggest gifts, and something that makes me that on a Monday night when I'm tired, like to motivate me to still go.
Totally.
But honestly, it was just, I'm so thankful that what I believed it was going to be is so far from what it really is, and that we are going through these phases of life together, while still being able to pray for each other and still talk about God and what he's doing in our life, or what we hope that he does next in our life. Yeah. And it's been one of the biggest gifts that we've had. Yeah.
So then like that part B of that question of just the journeying, even over the last 4 or 5 years, with your relationship with Jesus and the context of even like church community in general, going to being involved in a church, Christian church. What, you know, I think part of what I'm curious to hear your perspective on, because there's also a lot of people that are listening, or they know people in this kind of seat that are like newer to the faith and didn't have the same kind of like upbringing that was, you know, super involved in the church world or whatever else, like all the time. So the language is super familiar, or the terms or whatever else. One of the things I've watched you do so well is allow there to be a healthy journeying of like learning and growing, and not feeling like, not letting your potential embarrassment or insecurity stop you from continuing to show up and engage and learn and be a part of it. And I do recognize that that is a significant hindrance for a lot of people. It's that sense of like, I don't want to, why would I put myself in an environment where I don't know as much as the other people around me and potentially could appear or whatever as not the same as all of them. You know, again, you're coming from a lot of successful other environments where you're the boss. You're like, right. You do know, you're the one people are going to for the answers, in your business, in your role as a lieutenant in the fire department, just different things. And so to put yourself in a place where you might be coming into an environment where you aren't the boss and you don't know as much, from what I've watched, you've still found a lot of reasons to do that. And, you know, I've watched really Jesus become more real to you over the last 4 or 5 years that I've gotten to watch, and then watch him become more real in your family with, you know, with Andie and her relationship with the Lord and your kids.
Yeah.
And I'm watching, like, you know, legacy stuff, like transformational stuff for your future family and generations to come, because of how Jesus is really becoming more real. The Bible is becoming more real. But like, from your seat, what have you seen over these 4 years? Maybe, you know, just a thing or two, doesn't have to be all of it, but like, what stands out to you about like why this is valuable? Like, why come on a Sunday? Why even try to like learn or pray or, you know, read the Bible and spend time growing in an area that maybe you feel like you're less knowledgeable in, but you've experienced something real? What is it that you've experienced that's real, and it's not just theory or philosophy that continues to keep you like growing and coming back?
Yeah, I think, you know, as I think about my life, like backing up to when I was a kid, we went to church, but, you know, it was one of those things that kind of came and went type of thing. And I don't remember it much, to be honest. I remember events within the church, but not necessarily like the gospel of it. And then growing up, it's just something that I wasn't really connected with. I work in a field that sometimes it's made fun of, or it's judged, or, you know, it's like, how do you be open and have these discussions with people? But you have to realize, like, everybody has the ability to live their own life, right? Yeah. And part of my journey through life is I've been able to deploy and to help in a disaster sense. So I went to Katrina in 2006, and I was 18 years old, and I was down there for about 9 months and just saw a devastation. You know, I had no idea what I was going to be honest. I didn't even know I was getting paid to go. I thought it was just like a volunteer going down there to help out. And through that process, like, I saw like signs of what that God does in people's life, because the South is really driven by God's work. And in a moment where you lose everything, and for people to still see that was motivating to me. I remember pulling over one day, and I just got off the phone with my mom. She probably doesn't even remember this. And I was just like, I was missing home. I just got back from here for the holidays, and it was like, it was so weird to be back home where everything was normal, and then to fly back there where there's not even a street sign, you know, on the road. And there was a church that was just a bunch of tarps up, and so I just pulled over, and I was like, man, like, these people are like being moved right now, and just like remembering, like, they have lost everything, but in their eyes, they had lost nothing. And it was like, it was weird, because like, I felt it, but I still didn't have any relationship with God, like, at all. And I came home, and I'll fast forward, I deployed to Haiti a few times, but one time was right after the earthquake, and I was there with one of my best friends. I love the guy. He's an atheist, like, does not believe that there's any higher power whatsoever, right? And we're there, and it was on a Sunday, and it was him and I running this hospital there. And we were medics there, but practicing at a higher level that we did here at home. Yeah. And we were able to see like 300-400 people a day to treat, and it was just crazy. It was chaos. And one day on a Sunday, it's like, where is everybody? And our interpreter's like, oh no, it's Sunday. Like, nobody's gonna come here for treatment. Like, their treatment is God. And I'm like, what? And then we started hearing like these like chanting sounds, and like, what's that? And I'm like, come outside. So we go out there, and there's hundreds of Haitians like on the road, like with drums and megaphones, and they're praying for us, the two of us. And I'm like, man, and I remember it even moving him. He's like, huh. I'm like,
dude.
So
Jeez.
I had these like signs of like, man, like this is maybe something that I should pursue. And what I've realized now is God was always trying to pursue me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, nope.
Yeah.
And just kind of pushing against it, I guess. And what has brought me now is and I'm not perfect, right? Like I make so many mistakes, and I'm so grateful that that I am able to live this life that I do, even with the things that I have done. And but it has brought me closer to my family, to relationships, and to just be able to know, like in that moment, as you have talked about before, like just being able to just pray and know that I'm being heard and I'm not being judged.
Yeah.
And so
it's massive.
Yeah, it's been huge.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's been one of the, for me on a personal level, like just friendship and then ministry as well. Like it's been one of those consistent and ongoing examples over the last few years that the Lord has shown me as like, this is what's possible. Like when it comes to what he's able to do in people's lives. Like you're so right. He's been pursuing you like for a long time. And I think that there are people listening even to this now or watching this now that I hope that will be a little like whisper to their heart of like, God's pursuing you. And he's not pursuing you because he wants to like, punish you because of the life that you've lived or like trying to fix you about it. He's pursuing you because he loves you. He wants a relationship, right? And there's been those moments that even until you came to that point where like, okay, like, all right, Lord, like, or I'll give this a go. He's continued to love and pursue you. And I think that's something that somebody else needs to hear even as they're listening to this right now. But to get to watch that happen in your life over the last 4 or 5 years in a way where it has been such a cool reminder for me as a pastor that's given my life to this world of preaching and teaching the gospel and making disciples that make disciples, that like, no, really, like Jesus can impact and change someone's life and family as they get closer to him over the course of time and they grow in relationship and understanding. And I mean, I've watched that happen genuinely in your guys' lives. And it's one of those things too. I think sometimes people hear these stories and they hear those crazy testimonies of like, the drug addict that, again, praise God, like God freed up and released and man, they got clean and their whole life turned around and now they love and serve Jesus. And, they were in prison or selling and dealing and now they're not doing that anymore. And there's this like massive contrast of like dark and light. And then, but I almost think it's more, and then in the scriptures are even clear about this, the concept about it's more difficult for like a rich man to, get into heaven than it is to basically find a needle in a haystack, or like there's this idea of like it's or get a camel through the eye of the needle. That's what it is. To put a camel through the eye of the needle is easier than a rich man getting into heaven. But the concept more so is like the person that has experienced success and doesn't have need for much in their life, it's more challenging for them to see and understand like they still need like they still need a relationship with Jesus in order to actually experience like true and genuine purpose in life and saving from their sin. And so, but for the person that doesn't have anything, it might be easier for them to see. That's kind of the concept. I'm not putting you in this rich, super, but like there's been this journey with you where it's like, you didn't come from this massive broken life of sin necessarily that the Lord is, that the testimony, you have experienced a lot of things and you have a good heart, and all of these things that some people would maybe use as arguments for like the opposite of why people don't need God or why religion is whatever. I mean, they would say like, well, but look at these good people. Like, look at these people doing good things, going to, Katrina relief or Haiti, and yes, and yet there's still the need for the gospel because they can't save themselves with their good works, and ultimately they still need to be forgiven of their sin and made clean by the blood of Jesus to experience that full sense of forgiveness and new creation in Christ, to understand that it's not even about all of their good works, that they can. And I just have watched your life and family be such a beautiful example of like, this is such a powerful testimony. Like, these guys have been good people, and yet they're experiencing the transformative power of Jesus and understanding that like they can't do it on their own, and they're even quote unquote better people or more impactful people in a family with Jesus at the center of their life, because he gives something that nothing else that this world can offer. And that's just been it's been so cool to watch, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it has. It's been a good feeling for us as well. And I think it's made us better leaders too in the business that we own.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges as we have grown the business is that relationship. Like, Andie and I love, as you guys know, like, we love to build relationships, friendships, and to feel overextended in the sense of like, wow, like there's just actually not physically enough hours in the week to be able to catch up with each individual, and to maintain that relationship that we desire to have with our staff. I mean, we have such a great connection with everybody there, and they've been able to see us lead through some pretty hard times. Like, we opened up the business and the pandemic hit and we had to shut down the business. Right. But they were able to see how we navigated through those difficult days and months. But I think that they have been able to see who that we are as humans, and the type of a business that we want to have, and what we want the patients to feel when that they come in. Yeah. And so it has led us just to be overall better people. Yep. Better bosses, and we still continue to learn though. Yeah, I mean,
totally, as we all do, right? So like, kind of shifting into that world of business and career and like dreams in that space, right? It's like Freeborn Wellness is, is a seed that was something that probably was planted in, you and Andie's heart a long time ago. And maybe it took a while for it to kind of get, it's blossom into where it is now, which is again, two different facilities across, Lewis and Thurston County, and just continuing to grow in its reach and its ability to serve and care for people. But taking that step back, right? Again, the person that maybe doesn't know you, but hears about this or sees this from, and even again, someone that does know you, I'd love for just a moment to just talk about some of that. Like, how are you doing this? How do you guys do this? And when I say this, I mean, have a business with two teams. I mean, one team, but two locations, and manage and lead that team well. Like you mentioned, care for them well. And not just dictate, but like you're investing. I mean, the way I've watched you guys invest into your team, in your business, and create opportunities and environments for them to have not just a paycheck, but like a community, an authentic place of being cared for and belonging and all of that, right? While they're doing their jobs. It's been amazing to see. So you're doing that. You're working as a full-time, firefighter, and have 3 kids, and, lots of other things outside of the relationships you're talking about. How, if somebody is probably thinking as they're listening to this, like, that's not real, or that's not possible, or they see people like that and they're like, they don't get it, and think to themselves, I can't, step into this thing, maybe that I want to step into, because I have a full-time job right now and I have responsibilities maybe for family. So I'm not going to start this business or step into this dream until will you just talk about that world, how you guys are balancing that, or trying to balance and navigate that? And maybe even to the person that's like, I can't start my dream or my business because of where I'm at? Maybe if you wrestled through some of those thoughts and how you navigated some of that.
Yeah, it's definitely been a balance, and one that we continue even this last week to work on.
Yeah.
We have not by any means been able to perfect it.
Sure.
But there's a reason for that as well. And that'd be a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
It's been a process. We were definitely both led at separate times to open up what we have now. And it comes from history. My dad, part of the reason of his death is he was an injured worker. And I was also an injured worker 15 years ago on an ambulance. And so we both had these passions for that and how to step up and serve to another level and to provide a better care. But I didn't quite realize what we were getting into, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I remember so many days, for the first years of the business, getting off a shift and just being exhausted, and to walk into the doors of the business. And every time that I walk in, I look up at our name above it. I'm like, I'm going to be here to be the best who I can, but then it'd be like, hey, the fax machine's not working. And hey, this patient didn't show up, or, whatever the problem was in the moment, I would think in my mind, oh my goodness, an hour ago, I just told a loved one that their loved one just died. And just be able to make that transition in my mind was super difficult.
Yeah.
And it was hard. And we went through many, many months of just feeling overwhelmed. And I think the biggest key that we have learned is you have to embrace the people.
Yeah.
You have to show them that they are important and qualified enough to make decisions, that they're not just there to earn a paycheck,
right,
but we also give them the ability to go buy a new fax machine or whatever it is, right? And to maybe step away from the concept of, I think so many first-time business owners think that they have to be everything. They have to be the marketing person, and they have to oversee the patient care and do all the payroll and everything else. And it is too much. And so you have to be able to help embrace others,
yes,
to support your mission and to make something grow.
Yeah.
And I think that Andie and I haven't done the most perfect job at it, because there's been learning moments, but I think we've done a really good job. We wouldn't be where we are right now without being able to motivate others to take over some of those roles.
Yeah.
And I think that we'll continue to do that. Kids are going to school, praise God, this year. I mean, there's hard things with that as well.
Sure.
My time with my daughter is going to be limited, but at the same time, just to have a little bit more of the freedom to continue to help it grow.
Yeah.
But when it comes to business, you got to follow your heart, and you got to be bold, and taking risk, if you have faith, I think is an okay thing to do.
Yeah.
And it will pay off. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. One of the things that we resonate with each other a lot is that value of being a quality dad and a quality husband, right? Amidst all of this stuff, we both recognize in life that no matter how successful we could be outside of the home, in business, in ministry, in career, whatever, that if we're not successful in the home and in our marriage, that we're unsuccessful, right?
Yeah.
I think we both would resonate with that sentiment. And, I think one of the things that a lot of men and women are really challenged by is just how do you do all of that, right? In a way that's still, at the end of the day, and I think part of where I'm even in this season of my life is recalculating and assessing this constantly, and wanting to do a better job of just, if I were to sit down with my kids and go, how have you felt like daddy's been spending time with you lately?
Yeah.
How present, how much eye contact have I been giving you, or how seen do you feel? And they were able to understand that. It wasn't just talking to a 3-year-old and them not getting what I meant. They were to get that and then give me an honest answer. What would that honest answer be? And would I be happy with that? Not just happy with it. Would I be content in a way that was that's good. That's where I want to be. And I think for guys like you and I too, so much of the extra mile and hours and burning the candle wick at the end of both sides, or whatever the terminology is.
And in the middle.
There you go. Yeah, right. All of that. It's, I would say, again, for kind of speaking on for both of us, but for so many other guys out there and gals out there as well in the same capacity, that the effort and sacrifice is motivated in large part because of our families, wanting to help create something for them in the future that is going to care for them in a way that is beyond where we are able to care for them now. And yet there are those realities where sometimes that exchange isn't maybe worth it, or it's not worth it to the way we think it is, until we can get there and we recognize, gosh, my daughter's 16 now and doesn't want me to get on the floor and play these games with her or whatever else. And so I say that to say we've got kids in a similar season. Jack's older than Weston by a few years, but we have kind of that layering. And, I think something I'm super thankful for when I think about you and Andie in our lives is that you are people that are both going after all that God's placed in your heart when it comes to dreams, calling, career, making a difference in the world, helping and serving people, building something with your life, it's going to outlast you, but also like wanting to continue to grow in your marriage and as a father and as a mother, where we are going to continue to be able to have relationship within our context that we can keep challenging each other to do that well, right?
Yeah.
To be those like, let's go and drive up to the mountain and jump in the snow kind of thing, with our kids and make it happen, or, and remember how fleeting the time is really with them in these seasons while we're building, while we're sacrificing in all these other areas. And so I'm just thankful we have that, and we'll continue to have that in the seasons to come, because I know how easy it is to lose sight of that stuff that really matters when it comes to that, without people that are in close relationship with me that can be like, hey dude, I love you. It's awesome that you're doing these great things for people and making an impact. But like, how's your time with Weston?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Has Lainey felt seen by you in the last 3 weeks? That can come from not like a judgmental place, but like you care about that more than you care about me being a great pastor or a great podcast or whatever else. Right. And so, I think for me, that's that there's no price tag I can put on that. Like people, like that relationship, accountability, that like-minded, like-hearted value of like what really matters. And you and Andie have that in a way that just Holly and I are super thankful for and resonate with, and pray we can continue to be that for you as well. But yeah, it's special. And I think I'm saying all that to say, I hope people find that and look for that, right? You've got to have people in your life that aren't just celebrating you when you've hit this next milestone of career or whatever. And, but they're also celebrating you when you've said no to something, because it means you've had more capacity to be a more present dad.
Absolutely.
Right. Or, that you, whatever that is. And I just think like that is an intentional pursuit. You have to pursue people and relationships that are going to be close enough to you to champion the stuff in you and your family that really matters, and not just what the world on the outside. Again, not that it's bad, it's good.
Yeah.
But that it's just helpful, because I don't think we get there by ourselves. I think we lose sight of it pretty quickly when we're isolated by that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, just those reminders together, like what you mentioned, that's huge, because, the clock is still ticking. Yeah. And our time here is such a gift. Yeah. And, I think about my kids and my relationship with my wife, and if something was to happen tomorrow and we lost the business and I wasn't in my other job anymore, like who's going to be there at the end of the day, right? Totally. And so the best investment that I can put in time and my energy and my love and everything else is them. Yeah. And the people who help support and cherish the relationship that I have with my family. Yeah. 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 You're an amazing husband and dad, man. I remember just even recently when you
you had a birthday kind of celebration. I think it was this last year for Jack, where you guys did like the, was that Jack's or Dean's party?
Dean's.
It was Dean's.
Outdoor.
That's what it was. Dean's party. And you guys set up, on your property, just all these different little environments, and shooting bow and arrows, and building a little shelter fort thing, and like fishing raw. I mean, you guys went all out, and it was this. I remember being there and thinking to myself, like, if there was, and it wasn't to like make everybody look at you and be like, look at, I'm a good dad. It was because there were little things that you knew would be an expression to your son that like I value you, I see you, and like I want to make memories in this special day to celebrate you and your birthday. That I just took a step back and I was like, you could have done one or two of those things and kind of called it good if you want, like, hey, I did something, I'm busy, and at least we had a birthday party, whatever those. And yet I just watched you, like, that was your priority that day. Like, it was like that was your great next goal for the business kind of thing that you were hitting. And it was just to make this experience for your kids like the best you could do. And that, it just, like, that's who you are, man. You have those moments with your kids, and I know with Andie in a way that's like, no, I'm gonna lean in a way that it's what is not only needed, but it's like what will make an impact and go beyond just the temporary, that I'm just so inspired by and want to continue to grow, and as a man and as a husband and as a dad as well. And it's so good to have examples of that in this life where, sometimes I think they're just lost. Those examples are lost because they're not always, Instagrammed and, promoted. And I don't think that should be, right? But it's just good to be reminded like that was worth your time and investment, and in a busy, fast-paced, full plate life, we are constantly making those micro decisions on if something's worth it or not. And I think we need to get better, and I think the Holy Spirit is significantly helpful in this, helping us discern moments. But I think in general we need to get better, and I will say to parents and husbands specifically, spouses, but husbands because I am one. We need to get better at making better judgment calls on those, what's worth it or not, especially while we're in a season where our kids are still young. And I'm talking to myself, but the ability to go like, yeah, let's go all in today.
Yeah.
It'll be worth it.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, I think that you said it well when you said you have to be intentional.
Yeah.
Like, that was an intentional day.
It was.
And I remember that morning, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be very intentional on Dean for his birthday. He's the middle kid. Yeah. His birthday's in the middle of the winter time.
Yeah.
Like, just, I wanted that day to be special for him. And Andie and I have talked about it many times, like outside of our marriage and when my kids were born, that was honestly one of the best days of my life. Yeah. Like, because he was so thankful and had so much fun, but also I think we had like 35 kids there that day. Yeah. To be able to see them have that experience as well, because maybe that they haven't ever had that experience, or maybe their parents are not being as intentional in this phase of their life. But just to see how much of these kids just love that day just meant so much to Andie and I, and it was awesome. Yeah. It's gonna be hard to top it.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, my kids were impacted by it, and and thank you now for setting the expectation so high for them. So no, it was so, but that's a snapshot. I think for when I think about like the way I've watched you, lean in, and that's that really important capacity as a dad, and continuing in that space too as a husband. So, man, I think the thing I'm most excited about when I think about, when I look at the future for you and your family is the already foundation that you've laid, and the amount of things that you've done and accomplished and have sown into that at a young age. I mean, you are still extremely young on the side of life that, you are, to have where you are, almost 20 years in firefighting, and I mean, married for you said 12 or 13?
12 years tomorrow.
But yeah, 12 years tomorrow. By the time this podcast comes out Tuesday, so yeah, you'll have celebrated it. You know, this, like, that's, I mean, you know, you've already seen and accomplished a lot. Like, you could call it good now and feel like, man, like, I made a pretty significant dent. And yet there's still so much that is in front of you guys that I know the Lord has for you as you continue to be consistent and faithful in the small but right things, day in and day out. Caring for people the way that you have been, and being a good friend, being a good husband, dad, boss, coworker, etc. When you think about this, kind of wrapping up this conversation today and this podcast, like the big idea of it, which I'm thinking about even the moments we've had so far, there's probably a lot of it implied throughout the conversation, but is really to like challenge and encourage people to consider the things that are holding them back so they can get freed up from those things, so they can build up who they were made to be. And you've overcome a lot and are still overcoming a lot, you know, even in your lifetime, you know, current season. It's evident in your life and in your family. You are building, God is building in you, and you are building who you were made to be. Like, it's evident. It's not, you don't have to search for it. It's there. It's pretty clear. And so for me, that it indicates like there's been a lot of overcoming things in your life that have held you back at times or in seasons. When you think about that, maybe even now, there's still things that you would say, like, I'm overcoming this now as I step into more of who I was made to be, and or I look back on something that held me back that I have overcome. What's something that just stands out that you would say, like, for your life, you're like, that's been one of those freed up to build up moments that I've experienced personally?
Yeah. First, I just want to thank you, like, for this invitation.
Yeah.
And make sure I just take that moment, because I've gone through a process in my head about this day, right?
Yeah.
Like, knowing that it was going to come, and maybe being more open than what people know of me.
Sure.
And but to be able to speak to others in case if they've gone through something in their life that I have, and to be able to speak to them as a gift. So
yeah,
I do appreciate that. And to answer what that you're asking, you know, for me, I think that every person needs to come up with a mantra, you know, of some sort in their life. Like, for me, it's contentment and happiness. Like, those are the two things that I want. Like, that's with my family, that's with my everyday living, that's with my home.
Yeah.
And my counter mantra is chaos and stress.
Yep.
Which is really interesting because I deal with chaos a lot in my line of work, right?
Right.
But it's I think in order to know what you're looking for, you have to also know what you're not looking for.
Yes.
And the second part of that is life. You know, I've been blessed with the ability to see life come into this world, being able to be there when a baby's born, but more often than not, I'm there when life from this earth goes away.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in very young people and in very old people, but our time here on earth is a gift. And so to be able to live in that moment and see things for what you do have. And so if that's time with your kids or your wife, like, take advantage of every one of those moments.
Yeah.
And don't worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow will come, right? And hopefully, and you need to approach those when that time comes, the challenges that you're going to be faced with. But today you just need to focus on who's in your life and what you're currently doing. Because it's a short time and it's a gift.
Yeah.
And,
so good.
So
it's so simple and yet so challenging.
So hard. Yeah.
Right. And that's, you know, like, I think, but there's something about the reminder and the continual reminder to help re-bring, you know, that back to the focus of, like, how powerful it is in its simplicity, but and how true it is. And so, yeah, no, man, appreciate that reminder today. And I know people listening are going to be really encouraged and impacted by your willingness to, sit here and even have this conversation. You know, I don't know how much podcast experience you have being on is this one of your first ones?
This is first. Oh yeah.
So I feel privileged in that sense. I know the challenge of just navigating, like, am I really going to go on and have a conversation that I don't know what he's going to totally ask yet or whatever else. And so just honor and admire that courage and willingness to do that in the process that you took to really care about your yes. And I know you've talked about other things that God's placed in your heart for the future around just more than even what you're doing now. And I hope and pray that even this experience inspires more of that. You know, like there are people that need to hear Cory Freeborn's voice and experience and invitation to more, that whether it's in the world of, the first responder world, entrepreneur, how you do both that. Cause there is that thing you mentioned about just, there's this unique world of people like you that are in that space that are like, got dreams to start or want to do business, but also are in, the first responder, emergency services kind of world and trying to figure out that you've got something to say. And it's beyond that. Like, you're an incredible business leader. You're an incredible, boss in those environments. But I pray that even today, like you leave and you feel this sense of like, okay, like, and maybe this is even a moment that you'd look back on and go, some of those things that God has probably deposited in you that you're like, I don't know, it might just be that you look back on maybe this conversation and go, that was part of some of the ceiling of what God has been speaking that maybe just pushes me one more step to take, forward, because you've walked the walk. You're still doing it, but you've walked the walk now for a long time. And so your words carry weight. They're weighty. And there, I do think is a season probably coming, whether you're ready for it or not, where, because you've faithfully walked the walk and you've led a consistent life in that way, that the Lord will begin to give you more opportunities to speak and to talk. That is going to be exponentially impactful because of the way that you've laid that foundation of living what you're preaching, in a way that not a lot of people can say in that same capacity. So I'm going to be here for that and championing you in whatever that world may or may not look like. But just because I just believe in you guys so much. You and Andie are a powerful, dynamic duo, husband and wife partnership. Your family, your kids are just beautiful, man, inside and out.
They're amazing.
Well, with that, for everybody listening and watching, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, see you later.